um, specifically related to the crypto market, and not about trading intraday, not about long-term price guesstimations, but more of a bigger picture, zoom out, competitive, thoughts about what crypto is actually doing to the world, right? If you think about it, 15 years ago, there was no, 16 years ago now, I guess, just a little more than 15 years, 16 years ago, there was no working cryptocurrency that was actually scalable and had all the benefits that we have with Bitcoin, right? And then along comes Satoshi and gives us the white paper, and then publishes the information and turns on the network in January 2009. So 15 and a half years ago, just a little more. And since then, crypto has gone from being nothing in terms of cryptocurrencies to not just being the ninth most valuable asset in the world in terms of crypto, in terms of Bitcoin, and a still small overall market size compared to many other markets, but with potentially massive upside for growth, for adoption, for all kinds of things, right? This is something that we're seeing change the way people do money and the way people do transactions of value. Okay. And those values don't have to all be financial, obviously. What we can say for sure, unquestionably, is there is no real question, no debate, that what we're seeing is significant whales, central banks, big financial institutions, and of course governments taking more and more control. And they're doing this for the express purpose of controlling the future of wealth. And so even if you think that it's going to be amazing when Bitcoin hits $1 million, if it ever does, whether that's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 50 years from now, whatever, that is really going to be a time when people are not going to celebrate it nearly as much as they think they're celebrating that thought now. Because by the time it gets to 50, or to $1 million for a Bitcoin, okay, the price purchasing power, or the purchasing power of your dollar, will be so much significantly less than it is today, right? That effectively, if it goes up even to 100,000 in the next year or two, or 250,000 or whatever, that would be worth more in terms of purchasing power than 1 million will in another 8, 10, 12 years after that. Because the dollar is depreciating in purchasing power, and it's not 2% a year, okay, like it was for many years. It's depreciating at significant rates, right? Like easily 5 to 7% a year, and more, even 10% a year. And frankly, it's been that way for many years, right? Like I can remember, I remember all the years, but specifically about 7 years ago, 2017, okay? When you could buy whatever it was, anything practically, and it was about half the cost of what it is today. Okay, that's a 7% depreciation in purchasing power every single year after year. After about 7 years of that, you cut your value in half, right? And it's even worse because 7% after 1 year is not the same thing after 7% the next year, and so on and so on. So the compound losses are tremendous. The compound gains to products being sold are also tremendous, right? Prices are going up, and they've more than doubled in 7 years. I'm talking about prices of general goods that people buy to live, food, or to get around, cars, or to buy houses, right? A house, 4 years ago, or not 7 years ago, in like 2017, a house that would cost you like whatever, $200,000, $250,000 is now easily over 400,000 and maybe as much as 500,000 bucks, right? That's an insane price gouge, and it also puts most people in a situation where they will never own a house at those rates, because they'll never have $100,000 minimum or $250,000 minimum to put down for a down payment or whatever. They're just not going to have it, right? Most people don't have $1,000 for an emergency. You want them to put down $250,000? How? Is somebody going to give them the $500,000 credit at the bank if they don't have $1,000 for emergency savings? No, right? Don't be ludicrous. But that's exactly what's been happening, is the banks are being ludicrous, and the central banks are being ludicrous by printing all this money and doing quantitative easing, but not actually distributing it to people. They just keep distributing it to people who already have everything, which is large banks and large corporations and huge whales. So there is no, I hate to break it to you, there is no upside to this awful story of your dollars having less and less purchasing power. It's just not going to get better. Right? The only way that it improves is if dollars stop being printed, which they're not going to do, and if the dollars that already exist get massively redistributed to the have-nots. And they're not going to do that. They give $600 per person during COVID or whatever, $1,000, $2,000. Honestly, that wasn't nearly enough for most people. A lot of businesses that should have received nothing because they were technically making too much, but the government shut down their businesses because they shut down their clients. So companies that were making too much were all of a sudden making nothing, but couldn't qualify. What happened to one of my businesses, right? The company was making too much, had too much revenue from all the clients. The government shut down all the clients by buying them out, and then the company had basically very few or almost no clients left. That happened to tons of companies, right? Tons. And did those companies get any help? No, because we were making too much, right? Did those people get any help? Did the individuals working in those companies get any help? No. If they were fired, they lost their job. The last job you had was at a company that was making too much, so you don't get any help. What? Right? There was no PPP for a lot of people. If you were an expat, for example, living overseas, no PPP. Why not? There's millions of people living overseas. They were affected too. Right? Nope, no help for you. So the point is, governments and banks are doing everything they can to squeeze the little guy, and they're doing an extremely effective job of it, by the way. And they are going to continue to do that to make sure that the have-nots remain have-nots, and they're going to try to get as much of the crypto as they possibly can in their control before the average retail consumer even considers acquiring any. They're going to scare the bejesus out of people to make sure that people don't buy any of this stuff, because they don't want people to own it, even though they're touting it as the next big thing and blah, blah, blah. At the same time as they're saying, yeah, we're going to buy more of it, they're also telling the average retail consumer, stay away from this stuff. It's too volatile. the future of finance is too volatile and you don't want to own a piece of it, that should be a red flag for you right there. Right? I'm not telling you to buy it or not. I don't really care. It's your decision. I'm just saying the propensity, the massive tendency of people is to avoid. And the thing is, you can't avoid risk and expect to get huge rewards. It's not a thing, right? Unless you're a lucky lottery winner, you can't really avoid risk and win massive life-changing rewards, right? It's not a thing. And you have to remember that these governments and big banks, et cetera, they have all the money. Where you just have the crumbs. You could even have billions of dollars. You still just have crumbs. Right? Elon Musk, compared to the size of the U.S. government, has crumbs. Yes, he has a lot more money than anybody else practically, but he has crumbs compared to the size of like the U.S. government. Right? So just whatever you decide to do, make sure you do it as informed as you can. Because these banksters and government thugs, essentially, are throwing misinformation and deception and misleading information at people left, right, and center. They don't care. They're going to disarm you by misinforming you and scaring the bejesus out of you to keep you away and keep your hands away from the future of assets. And that's why they've been buying up all the Bitcoin and all the Ethereum. And if you think they're not going to go after other assets next, think again. They want it all. They don't just want your Bitcoin. They want your Solana, they want your ETH, they want your Litecoin, they want your Monero, they want your Zcash, they want your BNB, they want whatever you have. DOT, they don't care. They want it. They'll tell you there's not much interest among the retail investor space, but there's huge interest in the government space. They want to own it all. And it's possible that they could very easily do that. It's only a couple $1 trillion. Think about it. They could buy the vast overwhelming majority of coins right now for less than a couple $1 trillion, which may sound like a lot of money to you, but consider that the government burns anywhere from like 4 to 8 trillion a year right now, adding it to the debt. Just the U.S. government. Forget collectively around the world, all the governments. The market for crypto is still very small. $1 trillion sounds like a lot. 2 trillion sounds like a lot, but it's not. In terms of a global market, it's not a lot at all. So that's going to be it for now. Don't be misled. Don't be duped. Don't be suckered. Don't be scared out of holding assets you might already have. If you think it's a time to sell, sell. If you think it's a time to buy. That's entirely up to you. But be aware of the actual information. Like, don't listen to people. Don't listen to even me. Don't listen to anybody telling you ever. I'm never going to tell you to buy or sell now. I'm not going to say it. Right? Don't listen to that stuff. Don't listen to people say, "Oh, here's a signal." Who cares? They're just lying to you. Right? You can't copy someone else's signal. By the time they tell it to you, even if it's in a live stream, by the time you try to copy it, the move is too late. Okay? You need to be on top of it on yourself, on your own, so that you don't screw up and miss occurrences of opportunity. Whether you're a trader, keep in mind one last thing: that the average amount of Bitcoin on if it was equally distributed among all 8 billion people, and the population is constantly growing, let's say it was 8 billion people, you'd have like 1%, not even, like 0.008%, 0.008 Bitcoin. Now consider how many are in the hands of all the big whales, etc. already, and you realize there's only 1 million people who have 1 or more Bitcoin. Everybody else that holds any Bitcoin out of the 250 million wallet addresses holds less than a Bitcoin. You like 10 years from now, people will be lucky to have 10,000 Satoshis. Like, I'm not kidding. Like, like if you just hold on to 0.01 Bitcoin right now for the next 10 years, 15 years, you will mathematically be in the top. Not because it might go to 100 million, bajillion, gazillion dollars. It doesn't matter. Just statistically, the distribution of it is going to be that. What is that? Doesn't matter. You'll be in a very tiny percentage of people who actually have 0.1 Bitcoin. If you have a whole Bitcoin, 5, 10, 15 years from now, you will be very, very, very rarefied. You already are, statistically, on the planet. There's not 21 million people who have one Bitcoin, right? Not even close. There's about 1 million out of 21 million coins, of which almost 20 million have been mined. 19.7 plus million have been mined, which means there's only another 1.3 million to be mined, which means if another million people, 1.3 million people bought a single Bitcoin from here until the end of all mining Bitcoin, which is not going to be the case, then you'd have 2 million people with a whole Bitcoin. It's not going to be like that. It's going to be less and less people with a whole Bitcoin. Most people will be lucky to have 0.01% or 0.01 Bitcoin, which, yeah, sure, that's like $500-600 right now. And I get it, that's not cheap from a lot of people. But think about how crazy that is. That the government and the big banks and the whales and everybody else have bought this stuff up at a rate so fast in the last, well, it's been a number of years already, but they've completed their massive power buying spree. They're still on it, but they've bought the bulk of it already. They're just getting the gravy now. That it's basically, it remains the case that basically nobody's going to have a whole Bitcoin in the next 5-10 years, except for the ultra wealthy. So put yourself in that, or maybe not maybe some people will have a Bitcoin and they won't be ultra wealthy because the Bitcoin won't be worth that much, but it'll basically be the ultra wealthy who have as many of them as possible, and just a few other people have, happen to have a Bitcoin, even if it's not worth millions of dollars. That's crazy. It was meant to be distributed. And sure, 21 million was never going to be enough for most people to have a whole one, right? Even if it was fully distributed, like I said, the average person would have like 0.008 Bitcoin or something. And now it's going to be much less. It's going to be like 0.002 will be like or even less, will be like the average that a person can hope to get. 0.002 Bitcoin. That's it. Any more than that is statistically out of reach. Anyway, think about that. Happy days. See you.